On this edition of Pathways, from a small patch of farmland to a state-of-the-art campus, explore the first 50 years of Howard Community College. HCC has trained generations of healthcare professionals over the decades. Find out how their impact is being felt every day in our community.
I definitely enjoy serving the people in my community.
Alumni share their HCC experiences and how the college has influenced their lives and careers.
HCC proved to be a really good place to start and begin kind of a journey of learning that I had never really experienced before.
And they may not be playing on the field, but HCC athletes are making their mark in the virtual world of esports. Hello, and welcome to Pathways. I'm Dr. Kate Hetherington. It has been 50 years since Howard Community College was founded on October 12, 1970. So many changes have happened since that first day when there was just one building, 594 students, and acres of farmland surrounding the campus. The college started many exciting academic programs, such as nursing education, all in an effort to meet student and workforce needs. It is this ongoing commitment to the community that ensures HCC stays true to its original vision of providing Howard County with quality, lifelong learning.
Thought it'd be a wonderful idea to come here and start a new community college based on this new planned city of Columbia.
We really wanted to create this community of learning that would enable students to have an outstanding collegiate experience close to home at a price they could afford.
There is a culture here that supports innovation and change. The ideas are free-flowing, and that makes it an exciting place to be.
For me, the most important thing at HCC are the people who work here. They want to make sure that we do the best for our students in meeting our mission, providing pathways to success. Joining me to reminisce about HCC's past 50 years is HCC Vice President of Administration and Finance, Lynn Coleman, the Dean of Science, Engineering, and Technology, Patty Turner, and alumni Wayne Jenkins and Kiara Diamore. Welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn, I want to start with you. You have worked at HCC for decades, and you have been such an important part of the college's history. You know, when you think back over this period of time, you're working at a top-notch institution, as you know, and you have helped shape that by your involvement over all these many years. So, you know, when you think about the thing that resonates the most with you, what strikes you the most as having an impact on the college's commitment to excellence?
I think one of the biggest things is the employee and student involvement in everything that we do. I think people are very dedicated to the college, and I think the merit program helps somewhat stimulate that involvement because you get paid based on that, but also the strategic plan, the ability of everyone to participate in the strategic plan, and I think just the commitment of people in the college. I have to, when I heard Kiara was going to be on the program today, I have to tell you, years ago, she was one of the students that started our environmental program, our recycling program. And I just remember how everybody got so excited when she came along and wanted to start recycling our cans, and all the students were out there going through the trash doing that. And I just feel like everybody got involved because people really cared about the college and really wanted to see us improve and move forward. And so I think when students came up with a great idea to do something, everyone wanted to participate in it.
Well, that's so important, Lynn, and thank you for sharing your perspective. Patty, I'm going to move on to you now. How do you see the college's student-centered approach being employed today? We heard that from Lynn of how important students are to the work that we do, to the mission of the college. How do you see that approach being employed?
One is our student-centered active learning initiatives, right? And this might sound like a new idea, right? Because you see people publishing papers about the success of these active learning initiatives, but we've been doing this since the early 1970s, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. And this can take the form of structured programs such as study abroad, service learning, my favorite undergraduate research, but also takes the form of broadly implemented active and collaborative pedagogies, right? So if you were to walk onto our campus, you would look around and you would see formal and informal learning spaces with multiple whiteboards and a range of technologies that students can use to collaborate with each other and with faculty, and that they can share their work. I also think we work closely together as a community to help students build their pathway to success as they define it, whether it's a path to a four-year school, transfer institution, graduate school, employment. So we work together to make sure that we understand what they want to do, and we work together to facilitate it. We work closely with employers in the form of advisory boards and apprenticeship programs so that we can prepare our students appropriately for the world of work. And we work really closely with our four-year partners to align our curriculum to make sure that when students leave us, they have all the skills and abilities that they need to move on in their bachelor's degree and beyond. And then finally, I think we've always done a really good job of listening to our students. And that takes multiple forms. There are casual conversations with faculty and with staff. There are surveys that we talk to our students all the time. We listen very carefully to what they have to say, and we use that to inform how we improve. And I think that's been key to our success.
Patty, thank you so much for that insight. The next question I have, it's actually for you and for Lynn, and because you've been at the college for such a long period of time, so both of you have seen the college evolve during this time. So I'll start out with asking you first, Patty. How have you seen the college change, not only for students, but employees over the period of time that you've been at HCC?
When the college opened its doors, there were 10 full-time faculty and 14 adjunct faculty. Now think about that, with all the things you have to teach. This entire operation, by the way, back in the day was housed in a single building that was smaller than the high school that I graduated from. And I graduated from a small high school, and it was set in the middle of a pasture. So much different. And we were really building the college from the ground up. We used cutting edge technology at the time, like electric typewriters and cassette decks with batteries in them so you could take them outside. And we could record tapes ourselves. We thought that was really cool. And I actually think as a faculty, we were more homogeneous then. We were starting our careers. We were all relatively young. A lot of us were starting families, so we were sort of gathered around that. And now we spend more time with faculty teaching in our own discipline, which makes sense, right? Because we're more siloed, we're larger. The curriculum is well developed. It's established, but it changes all the time, right? We revise it and we grow it. We've never been the kind of faculty that adopted anything just simply because somebody else was doing it. We've been incredibly creative. I think we're still creative. And I think we actually have more time now to be creative because everything is so well built. But we are busier. We use cutting edge technology now that's obviously different. We can teach and interact with students remotely, which is great. It improves accessibility for everybody. So.
Well, the world's changed during that period of time too, and everything has become accelerated. So, and a lot of that has to do with technology and its impact on what we do. So, thank you for sharing that and sharing those wonderful stories, because the college still has many connections with some of the original faculty members. And so it's nice to know that history. So Lynn, how about you? How have you seen the college changed for employees and students?
Well, I guess I remember when I came that, it was unusual, and this is how old I am, for everybody to have a computer on their desk. I mean, that was a big thing that everybody, and one of our former presidents thought that was really important, and he would send emails to people and made sure you had to read them. So he knew you were involved in reading your computer. So I think we've always been technology savvy and tried to be ahead of the curve when it came to things like that. But as we move forward, I think as we got involved in some of our Baldrige practices and all that we've done for years, our core work and our strategic priorities have helped to kind of bring things together and help us as a group. And when we started the process, even with the Plan, Do, Check, Act, I think that really helped a lot of employees see that they had a part, everybody had a part in what we were doing. And I look at so many things that got created and continue to be created. People want to improve their areas continuously and look for things to make the college better. And so we're always looking for ways to do that. Patty mentioned, when we were smaller, we used to do a lot of other things to get together as a group. And some of the things I look back on fondly were our faculty follies and other things that we haven't had those in recent years, but those brought us together, I think, too, as a group. And we all enjoyed watching participating in those and making fools of ourselves in the process of that.
Well, that theme running through both what you and Patty said goes back to that continuous quality improvement, how the college is always focused on becoming better, analyzing what we do, making adjustments, and then looking at the impact that we've had, whether it's in working with our employees or with students. And that is what, of course, allowed us to be a winner of the Malcolm Baldrige Award for Excellence. And even after winning the award, we keep on doing that. So thank you for mentioning that. So I'm going to move on to you, Wayne. And as an alumni of the college, you attended HCC in the early years. So let's go back to, you can tell us what year that was if you like, and let us know what that journey was for you when you were an HCC student.
Yeah, I started at Howard Community College in 1972. I was starting in the electronics program that the college had back then. And our professor, Bruce Reed, who was teaching electronics program, approached me about this new career program that they were starting called Biomedical Engineering Technology. And it really caught my interest because it sounded like something that I could have a real impact working for hospitals, working for healthcare, and being able to help the nurses and doctors do their jobs better through the work that we are able to do as biomed working behind the scenes. And I can identify with what Patty was saying, because back then there was only one building on the whole campus, and all the classes, all the administrative offices were in that one building, and it was even smaller than the high school I went to. So it was very personal back then. You really got to know the professors, and that really made it personal to me, to help me really hone in on my studies and feel like they cared about you as a student. And that was so important coming out of high school and not really knowing what I wanted to do, but having great responsibilities with having a family and everything. So I needed that kind of touch to keep me grounded, to keep me focused on my studies, and helping me to find a career that I felt that I could really put myself into.
Can you tell us a little bit about your career and how that start at HCC really helped shape your career going forward?
I became the manager of biomedical engineering at our local hospital here in Carroll County. General Hospital. And the basis and the foundation that I picked up at Howard allowed me to have the confidence, the knowledge, and the ability to actually approach the hospital about starting a biomed program in-house and bringing those services in-house as a separate department. I was hired by the president of the hospital at the time, and I was able to go in, and they gave me a lot of latitude to set up my program. And because of the courses and the things that I learned at Howard, I felt very confident, even though I had never worked in a hospital before. I'd never been in that environment other than my work-study program that I had at Howard, where we would have to go to hospitals so many times throughout the course of our studies to work in the biomed department. And that gave me the opportunity to see various biomed departments throughout the Baltimore area. And it triggered ideas in my head as to how I wanted to set up my department if ever given that opportunity. And so that was very instrumental in me being able to start a program from scratch with nothing. And I feel like I built it into a very successful program simply because of what we're able to do for the hospital, for the nurses and doctors. If you don't know much about the biomed field, we're the guys behind the scene. We're kind of like the Maytag repair. You know, you don't hear about us, you don't know about us, but, you know, having started a biomed program, I've employed, over the years, I employed quite a few Howard graduates from the biomed program. I've seen at least 5 of those students go on from my hospital to now lead biomed departments at other hospitals.
Well, Wayne, you know, the college's tagline is "you can get there from here." And not only did that happen in your case, but you brought a lot of people along with you. And the fact that as a young person, you established that program at a hospital shows you were a very early entrepreneur to advance biomedical engineering and making sure that the technology was available to help not only the docs and the nurses, but so many patients. So thanks for sharing your story. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
We're going to move on now to Chiara. And Chiara, how did attending HCC enhance your skills to create your own nonprofit? Maybe tell us a little bit about your background and then how you that background helped shape you in developing that nonprofit.
So I graduated from HCC in 1999 as a part of the Rouse Scholars Program, but I actually arrived at HCC through maybe an atypical route. I left high school halfway through 10th grade for a variety of reasons and started taking classes at HCC to complete my high school credits, but then also start to accumulate college credits. HCC was just a very important time in my life. I felt really closely connected with the teachers. Lynn told a story that I was going to tell about the work that I did with some other students to co-create the environmental club at the community college and what that meant in terms of literally being in the back, sorting through trash to pull out the recyclables. And so it was a very hands-on experience, but I just felt very known and supported in figuring out what was important to me, both as a person, but then also as an emerging professional and finding a way to explore those interests and develop a pathway. So I was at HCC for about 3 years, all told, before transferring. I transferred to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. My undergrad was in biology and international studies, both focused on the environment. But then I stayed on for their master's in environmental science and engineering. So I feel like the experience I had at HCC and within the Rouse Scholars Program really positioned me to be able to excel in what was a pretty rigorous academic setting when I transferred. Right out of my master's, I was hired as a consultant with a large consulting firm, and I did environmental consulting work for 13 years before I left that firm. I was with them. So a lot around sustainable design and energy efficiency, how do you engage people in choosing to make a more environmental choice when there is a choice to be had. For example, the Environmental Protection Agency has an Energy Star program. You might be familiar with the little blue star that you can see, and maybe not the other. So I helped manage that program for the EPA. And after doing environmental work and in that setting, commuting to DC, working a 60-hour work week, and learning everything I learned at that company, that I had my first child, who's now 10, about to turn 11. So I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and didn't want to commuting to DC and having 60-hour work weeks. I wanted to transform my vocation to something that would allow me to be more present in my children's lives. And so I decided to go back for a doctorate. And so the nonprofit that I founded 4 years ago is called the Community Ecology Institute. And our mission is to cultivate communities where people and nature thrive together. So we're working to take everything that research suggests as best practices in terms of creating healthy communities and to put them into ground here in Howard County, and then to create tools and resources where other communities could learn from what we've done and do the same where they are. So it's been this incredible journey, and I do think the courage to take a leap, like I did for the first time in my life with HCC, really helped to let me know that you can land on 2 feet. I was talking to some people at the HCC staff just last week about creating an apprenticeship program or some community learning opportunities between the school and the Community Ecology Institute's farm. We purchased the last farm in Columbia last year. It's just maybe 2 miles up the road from the campus. Now, Freetown Farm. So wanting to collaborate between the students in biology, or students interested in the environment, or even students in the culinary department about how we can work together as a community.
Kara, one of the things that I think I heard a theme running through not only what you just mentioned, but also with what we heard from Wayne is that you got this confidence to take these leaps. You know, you both at very young ages took these leaps and just hope that a net would be there. And of course that net was there. And the work that you're doing in the environment is so critical now with everything that we're living through in our country and actually throughout the world, but so important. So, and we're so fortunate that you stayed in Howard County. So your good work continues right here in Howard County. So thank you for sharing that. I do have a final question for you, Kara, and that is, as the college celebrates 50 years, what do you think are the highlights that the community would be surprised to know, or that you wish everyone knew about Howard Community College?
I still stay in collaboration with the school, especially through Bob Marietta, who leads a lot of the sustainability work on the campus. And so he and I serve on several committees together, and I feel fairly plugged into what the school is doing to be a leader in the area of sustainability through Bob's good work and the work of his colleagues there. And I think it's really remarkable. The HCC is truly a leader around how you can be a large institution with a significant footprint, but be incredibly mindful about how to tread as lightly as you can in terms of the ecological footprint that you have, from engaging the student body and thinking about sustainability and the environment and inviting the community in to share about opportunities, to hosting Greenfest every year, to, you know, all the many expansions that have happened from the time we were literally sorting out glass and recycling back in the late 90s, to really building the buildings that you've constructed. I mean, you have the gold buildings on the campus. So I feel like HCC walks the talk on all levels. You know, the students that are at HCC today are the ones that are going to be holding the mantle of resolving whatever legacy environmental issues continue to exist, and showing them through practical action how you can be a business, be a large business, but do that very thoughtfully. Hopefully it ripples out through their own thinking about the choices that they make. So I commend the school very much for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Kara. And thank you all for joining me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We've been preparing the next generation of healthcare workers since the nursing program launched in 1972. With a focus on developing caring and compassionate professionals, HCC is there to meet the demand in a broad array of healthcare fields. Learn more about our impact on students and the community.
Tracia Jordan was always drawn to medicine. When it was time to choose a college, she decided to stay close to home and head to Howard Community College.
I like small, close-knit, community-style environments in general. And I think that's what drew me to HCC.
Her career path has led her to the Cardiac Catheter Lab at Howard General Hospital.
I really enjoy taking care of people, and now that I'm working in the county where I grew up, it's very, I feel really good about giving back to my community and getting to know the people that live where I live and taking care of them.
Caring for the community has been a big part of HCC's healthcare programs since the very beginning.
The mission has always been to prepare entry-level associate degree nursing students who are prepared to meet the demands of the workforce. Even when the program started back in 1972, there was a call for more nurses. And of course, over the years, that call has grown exponentially.
Debbie Slack Katz was part of the first class of nursing students at HCC, and she's seen the program grow into what it is today.
At the time, I was all of 17 years old, and I had just graduated from high school. I was planning to be a nurse. Probably the thing that fascinated me the most, because I think it's in line with the way I think, is the whole integrated approach of the program. And that has carried me far on my journey, to be honest with you, because I can remember some of the early nursing instructors. We didn't even call them professors then, we called them instructors. But some of the early nursing instructors would say, it doesn't matter if you're on the pediatric floor or the adult floor, a blood pressure is a blood pressure. Once you know how to do it, you know how to do it.
Once Debbie graduated, she left for jobs in the Midwest, but eventually she settled back in Howard County.
There's something to me special about the Howard County because this is where my roots are. A lot of people know I'm the 13th generation of my family from this area.
As the needs of the community changed, so did the courses HCC had to offer. The opening of the new Health Sciences building coincided with the addition of 4 new programs: Medical Lab Technician, Physical Therapist Assistant, Diagnostic Medical Sonography, and Dental Hygiene.
All of our allied health programs have simulation capabilities within their individual laboratories. We have focused on using simulation as a safe teaching modality before you go out into the real world.
The chance to work with the newest technology was one of the reasons why Michael Seplack came to HCC. Originally working as a research assistant, he decided to make a career change into dental hygiene.
I was looking around, and just at that time, HCC was about to start their dental hygiene program. And I was like, okay, this works perfectly. I have a couple other degrees, and I've learned that a new school usually has the cutting edge technology, as well as try to be on top of the newest protocols, have the newest and the greatest.
You have to become adept to technology, the kinds of technology, and how to use them. Technology, automation, it's all very huge in healthcare.
As many graduates of HCC have discovered, a degree in a health sciences field can lead to a career outside of clinical work. Debbie Slack Katz went on to work on health policy.
One of the things that I learned early on in my career, and one of the things I've taken full advantage of in my career, is that being a nurse just doesn't mean that I'm working at somebody's bedside doing direct care. The thing that has been so significant to me as a nurse is the vehicle and the platform that it's given me to do so much more with my career.
And through those careers, the HCC graduates value their work in the community.
I grew up in a family that community service was very important. And as long as you had a sandwich, you could split it a couple different ways, so everybody could eat. So it was something that I value, and I value to this day.
It's rewarding that you really sometimes get to see certain patients develop, and you've gotten to be able to help them with that.
It's kind of like you have to start somewhere, and why not start where you live and then try to expand further into that. So that's a huge thing for me. And I definitely enjoy serving the people in my community.
At the heart of these stories is the rich history of the college, its employees, and its students. HCC Associate Professor of History, Dr. Rosemary Williams, worked to update the college history from 2012 to the present. Quite the undertaking. Today, Dr. Williams is joined by social sciences student Azra Ozturk, who is passionate about history herself. Azra is a dually enrolled homeschool student who chose to follow in her sister's footsteps and take college classes while still in high school. So Rosemary, we're going to begin with you. What did you learn in writing the college's history?
Well, I learned a lot. And one of the most interesting things I did is that I was able to interview some of the longest serving faculty, staff, and administrators at the college. So that was fascinating because I got a lot of the inside stories and I got a lot of insights into the history of the college. So as a historian, when I'm looking at the history of the college, I'm looking for examples of continuity and change. And what really struck me was the level of continuity between 1970 and today in terms of our values and our mission and what we really focus on at the college. A couple of examples that really sort of stood out. One was the technological innovation from in the 1970s, and of course, they didn't have computers. They don't have the technology we have today. But from the very beginning, they had like remote learning. They had telecourses in those days, which had the same goals as our online teaching of taking teaching outside just the college buildings itself and reaching out to the community. And they also had a lot of I found some interesting high-tech devices. The very first lecture room in the original building, and I've seen pictures of it, actually had little buttons that the students could press in order to sort of interact with the lecture. It was kind of like the Kahoot of its day. So I guess you could press the button if you were not understanding or something, get some feedback to the professor. So I thought that was kind of very interesting that a lot of what we think of as innovations today, they were already doing in 1970. The other area of continuity that I noticed very strongly as I read the history and I spoke to individuals was the importance of the focus of student-centered learning. And if you go back to the very first president, Al Smith, he was very much focused on this idea of student-centered learning. This was the 1970s, and they had some very interesting educational sort of ideas in the 1970s, very much student-centered. For example, we had a non-punitive grading system, so you couldn't get an F. There were no Fs. There was a sort of a flexible timeline, so students didn't have to complete their courses in one semester. There were very much alternative ways of learning. It wasn't just lectures and textbooks, it was videos and all sorts of alternatives. So it was very much a student-centered approach about, every student can learn and how do we enable students to succeed. And that is something that has continued throughout the history of the college, all the way up to today, very much this focus on student success. So those are some areas of continuity. When you look at change, obviously, one of the really big changes is the college itself. If you think of that in 1970 when the college opened, it was one building. In that one building was everything. You had the library, you had all of the labs, you had the classrooms, the faculty offices, the administrative offices, everything all in one building with the cafeterias and everything. And look at today, it would just be unrecognizable from if you'd seen it in 1970 with the growth that we've had. And it was very interesting to talk to people about some of the new buildings. I was talking to Patty Turner she's the dean of the SET building, and she was telling me about all of the design that went into that building so that every aspect of it had an educational purpose. Every piece of the inside of that building relates in some way and tells you something about the SET area. So that was very interesting, had insights into that building. So yes, growth, all of the new buildings, the creation of the quad, which I think was a crucial moment when it went from being a parking lot, which had been, to being a quad. It makes it feel much more like a college, I think, to have a quad in the middle. A lot of people visiting the school today say it looks like a four-year school, which I think it does. So from that one building to today, a huge amount of change. Other areas of change that I found very interesting were really ones that reflect the changes in society since the 1970s. And one that stood out was the role of women in society, which obviously the women's movement was already well underway in the 70s. But if you look back, some of the things I found were kind of surprising. There was actually a faculty member whose contract wasn't renewed because she was pregnant, which I was shocked. And I found a brochure from the Con Ed department, which was addressing women. It was courses for women, and it was things like flower arranging. And they had a thing called powder puff mechanics, which I found very interesting. So clearly we've come a long way, and you can just, even just looking at the presidents, the first two presidents were men, the second two presidents were women. So you see that the changes in society really reflected in the changes in the college. So those are some of the continuities and the changes that I found as I was exploring the history of the college.
Well, Rosemary, that's a fascinating summary. And having been a community college student who lived through that, and of course worked in community colleges my entire career, I just felt like I got a flashback of my life and my career, because those were similar things happening throughout the country. And your summary certainly talks about how that has happened at Howard Community College, and very, very thorough. And I also like the fact that you've spoken with people who are still working here, who had that experience, like Patty Turner, for example. Mm-hmm. And she certainly was able to give you that whole idea of continuity in the science, engineering, technology area. So very, very nice. Thank you. I have another question for you. Where does the college's history sit in the history of our nation and Howard County?
Right. Well, when you look at the history of our nation in terms of community colleges, the 1960s and the 1970s were the decades of community college growth. And it was largely, I think, due to the post-war baby boom. You have very much higher enrollments. So community colleges were just booming in the 60s and 70s. I saw one statistic which said, I think it was in the late 60s, there was one community college was opening every week in America. So this was really the period of growth. And being open in 1970, we fit right in the middle of that sort of 1960s to 1970s boom in community colleges. When you think about HCC in relation to Howard County, I think you have to look at James Rouse's vision for Columbia. So James Rouse, of course, is the designer, the builder of this model city of Columbia, where HCC is. And he had a vision, which was to avoid just the sort of suburban sprawl, which was going on at the time, and to build a designed city, which would provide its residents with everything. His idea was that they would have jobs, they would have housing, transportation, education, and also culture, and also he really emphasized the sense of community, the sense of belonging. And of course, also based on the ideas of diversity and equity in this community. So I think it was very appropriate that when the leaders of Howard County decided to build a community college, that it was built in Rouse's model city of Columbia, because it fits very well, I think, with his vision in terms of providing community, not just within the college, but supporting the community. If you look at things like our arts programs, the theater program, these are really give a great deal of value to the community. And if you look at the ideas of the philosophy of the college, the diversity of the college, I think it ties in very well with Rouse's vision. So I think we kind of go hand in hand with Rouse's vision for Columbia.
Thank you for that. Azra, I'm going to move on to you now. What draws you to history as a young student today?
I mean, I think it's very interesting to learn about past changes culturally, globally, and also nationally, I think. And even though I'm not an expert in history, I do enjoy taking classes at HCC to expand my knowledge of history. And like Rosemary had mentioned, like learning about changes in the past, I think that's what's most interesting for me. So it's honestly great to have this opportunity where I'm dual enrolling, and at such a young age being able to pursue these specific classes and these topics and being able to do research papers in them. I think that's very important to me.
And what have you enjoyed learning most in your history and social science classes at Howard Community College?
I would say, obviously I'm very interested in history, but also I've learned about psychology and sociology at HCC. And one of the classes that really stuck with me was Western Civilization and Modern History, where I had a chance to do also a research paper with a professor on the impact of British women's auxiliary services in World War II on employment rates and societal views of women working in the military. So those were very interesting things to learn about. Doing intensive research on something that I was passionate about is very important to me. And I think HCC has a lot of opportunities to do so.
So Azra, what are your goals after you complete your degree at Howard Community College?
I mean, I'm going to be graduating high school this semester just because with the homeschool instruction program, I'm 16 now, and once you turn 16, you just take the GED and you're done with high school. But I'll be graduating high school probably this semester, and then I'll be getting my AA in the spring, hopefully. My goal after I complete my degree at Howard Community College is hopefully to transfer next fall to a university to perhaps pursue a degree in history, and then hopefully in the future, I would like to do law school and become a lawyer.
Oh, okay. I think Rosemary and I both made the assumption you would be a PhD in history, and I'm.
History is a very good foundation for law, so I can see your pattern there. That's a good choice.
Azra, since you love history, I'm going to ask you this question: if there was a year in history that you would like to live in, what year would it be, and tell us why?
Somewhere in the late 60s. Just because of the civil rights movement and seeing this inspirational movement of rapid change that was necessary. And also, I think at the time there was the moon landing, which I think would have been a very interesting thing to see as well.
Well, I don't know about Rosemary living through that, but I certainly did live through that moon landing, and that was exciting and a lot of interesting things. One other thing that we didn't mention that was happening during that time is the return of veterans from the Vietnam War. Coming to the community colleges, many of them on the GI Bill. So many of the community colleges, including Howard, had men, predominantly men, coming back and intertwined with women, sometimes older women, and older women at that time would be maybe in their 30s and 40s coming to college, along with the traditional age students. So we had at HCC a very diverse blend of students, and what a wonderful learning opportunity for people to learn from each other, not only from the professor, but learn of life experiences that each other have been through. So thank you. Rosemary, now let's get to the present. 2020 has been a year of upheaval and change, from the global pandemic that we're living through to social justice protests, and of course, a divisive presidential election. As historians reflect back on 2020, how will the book be written? And where will HCC fit in?
This is the big question, right? And we're not even over yet. 2020 has a few months left in it. Who knows what could still happen? So it has been quite a year, and it's certainly been a year for the history books. I struggle to find a parallel in history. I mean, you can find some aspects of it. We were just talking about the 1960s, the civil rights movement. So I think we've seen some aspects of that this year as people take to the streets, and really what's become a mass movement in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. So that kind of reflects a little bit of the 60s. I think 1968 was one of those years that went down in history as an extreme year where everything happened, and I think we get a few echoes of that. We could go back to post First World War, 1918, when they had the great global flu pandemic, and there were some similarities there with that as it spread globally, and you realize how much each country interacts, how difficult it is to protect your borders against something like a airborne disease. So that was 1918 was somewhat similar. But I don't think we've had a year quite like this in our history, where so many things are happening at once. In terms of how the historians of the future will see it, I think it's actually too early to know that yet. I think you have to get a little bit more sort of historical perspective so you can look back on it. At the moment, it's hard to see how much lasting change it's going to bring about. I think some of that will depend on the economy. If we go into a recession or even a depression, or if the economy bounces back, I think that will make a big difference to the impact of the year. So I think we need to sort of move away from it a little bit and look back on it to fully understand it. In terms of HCC, this was going to be a fun year, right? We were coming into 2020 in like the celebratory mood. 50th anniversary of the college, we had lots of events planned. Also just coming off the Baldrige win. So there was a lot of things going to be happening. And of course, all of this, many of the events had to be changed or canceled or postponed. We had very many challenges. I think this was the most challenging year in the history of the college up to this date, in terms of the very rapid shift to remote learning. I think all the faculty, all the students, all the administrators are really scrambling to do that shift mid-semester. That is unprecedented. And we're facing things like budget cuts now. So this is a challenging year. I think that the future historian of the college, when maybe they're writing on the 100th anniversary of the college, is going to look back and definitely be talking about 2020. This is a big year. This is one that's going to be very much featured. It has some challenges. It perhaps has some opportunities for the college. Typically in times of recession, there is an increase in enrollment for community colleges as students, as unemployed people look to reboot their skills. So we might see increased enrollment, but along with that, you have the budget cuts. So that makes for a challenging situation. So again, a little too soon to assess it in terms of the long-term impact, but it's definitely going to be one they're going to be still talking about, I think, 50 years from now.
Well, I would agree with you. And I think the key will be for us to look at what happens in 2021, 2022, because the challenges we're facing right now have a possibility of continuing. I also think that there's an opportunity for us. I always talk about the silver linings and how many things we have learned about ourselves, about the college, about the way we do work, about how we may make changes coming out of the pandemic, the things we've learned that actually have been beneficial. So there's so many opportunities to become even better. And that's what the college is about. Or, you mentioned our focus on getting better, our continuous quality improvement efforts that we have. So we see that happening right now with what we're doing to make adjustments. And I just see that continuing. So there's, for me and for you and for many others, our students, I think there's a lot of hope out there too. So thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you.
Since the first commencement in 1972, HCC students have followed their own pathways to success, whether through graduation, transfer, or careers. Alumni shared their experiences at HCC and beyond in their own words. Here is that story.
Unlike a lot of students leaving high school, I was a little bit less driven in terms of what was going to be next for me. And so HCC proved to be a really good place to start, to discover that, and begin kind of a journey of learning that I had never really experienced before in my life.
I went to HCC to gain an associate's degree. The goal was for me to be more employable so that I could then earn an income that was going to hopefully support myself and my daughter.
I actually was playing soccer. I met some HCC students who wanted me to try out for their team. And so I tried out, they liked me, and so I played for the team and then registered for classes.
We were the first community college chapter of National Society of Black Engineers that was formally chartered. So it was just really, a big deal for us to be like, wow, we're a community college. We can be, with the movers and shakers on the 4-year level.
I had a tutor the whole time I was at HCC. And I remember in statistics class, I had this amazing woman who taught me statistics with shapes and colors. and boom, straight A's. I mean, who gets straight A's in statistics anyway?
I took part in the Step Up program and the Pride program. The Step Up program was a really good program in the sense that it helped me to really grow my cultural experience in the United States, meet a lot of extraordinary people.
You know, Howard Community kind of filled that void in my life that didn't exist at the time in terms of, you know, exposure to different different perspectives, learning, developing a hunger and an appetite for learning.
Howard Community College definitely gave me the confidence, the exposure, and the diversity to just know that I'll be able to do whatever I wanted to do.
Being at HCC gave me the opportunity to meet people that could really encourage me, help me to believe in myself.
Having been kind of a lifelong Howard County resident and then launching my career kind of in the market, I just look back fondly on my experience at Howard Community as kind of a springboard that helped me transition from really little direction to knowing more about what I wanted to go after in terms of the business, you know, the business world.
That journey that starts with the first step, that was it. And if it had not been the good experience that it was, I may not have gone on from there. You know, each step led to the next one, led to the next one. So it was the starting gate. It was the, you know, the catalyst for everything.
For students to succeed, many have to overcome their apprehension about mathematics. It often can serve as a barrier, taking students longer to complete. A brand new, free, one-week math camp was created to help students save money and advance in their math classes. Here to tell us more is Dr. Mike Long, Dean of Mathematics. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Kate. It's great to be here this afternoon.
Wonderful. So I have a question for you. Why is math such a barrier for students, and how do you think the Math Academy will help them?
There are actually a couple of reasons why math is viewed as a barrier to students. First and foremost, math is very different from many of the other disciplines because it involves numeric literacy, understanding numbers, working with numbers, and that. And again, it's not something students encounter in other disciplines. Second, students have often had a not so positive experience in mathematics earlier in their K-12 education. Frequently, it is cited in the literature that there may have been a particular teacher that turned students off to mathematics, and they never had a positive experience after that. And so one of our intents with the Math Academy was to begin to provide those positive experiences for the students. It was our intention primarily that, again, in addition to that positive experience, that our students would have a shorter math pathway because, as you mentioned, sometimes math is viewed as a barrier to students' completion of their degree or their program of study. And in many ways, we want to help shorten that pathway to completion. And the Math Academy is just one of those ways that we hope we can get students to completion faster.
So after having the experience of implementing the Math Academy, what impact do you think it's had?
I think a number of students, as a matter of fact, we served 35 students this past summer, and 24 of the 35 advanced at least one course ahead in their math pathway. 7 of the students actually moved 2 or more courses ahead in their math pathway. And so what impact does that have for this on the students? First of all, they have the shorter math pathway. They're moving ahead toward their degree completion or toward their completion of their program of study at a faster rate. But there's also a great deal of savings for the students. That's one less course they have to pay for. And so for a 4-credit math course, that's roughly about $562 in savings to our students.
So those savings are substantial. And the other thing is probably their confidence level has increased because of math. I know you probably weren't measuring that, but you have evidence that, you know, they're hopefully going to continue. And how about scholarships? Did they receive any scholarship money for participating?
Absolutely, they certainly did. So the scholarship is a key component. For completing the Math Academy, the students receive a $250 scholarship, and I do want to mention the confidence level. The students by the end of the week, I would say we had different students than we had at the beginning of the week. They felt supported. They were thankful. Their comments at the end of the week were very touching, as they just said thank you over and over many times. So there was a great level of appreciation that we were there to support them, that they saw their math placement test scores increase. And seeing their scores increase in just a matter of 1 week certainly is a confidence booster if they entered the academy not feeling good about their mathematics skills.
Well, I'm sure that's a testament to the tremendous work that you have done along with the math faculty and the staff that supported you. So thank you so much, Mike, and appreciate the great work that you've done. And the Math Academy will be around for a couple more years at least.
Absolutely. We hope it never goes away.
Right. Yeah, I hope so too. If students can save money and advance in math and learn to love math, that's quite an accomplishment. So congratulations to you. And thank you so much for all your good work.
Thank you, Kate.
Now let's hear from an HCC student about his experience with the Math Academy.
Well, participating in the boot camp paid off well for me because it got me one class away from my nursing math, the math that I need for nursing. I haven't had any math in over 20 plus years, and I always had a fear of math. And taking the Math Academy made it much, much easier for me to get over my fear of math. And the instructors were wonderful. If you had a question, they explained it to where you could understand it, because we all know everyone learns differently. But somehow these instructors really got to the core of, okay, let me show you one way, and I'm also going to show you another way, which was a good help, which was a real big help. So, you'll pick, you were able to choose which was the best way.
The Math Academy was made possible through a generous grant from the Rouse Company Foundation. HCC is continually at the forefront of innovation, which resulted in a number of national awards. First and foremost, the past academic year began with the most prestigious award, the 2019 Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. On the heels of this honor, HCC received the Bellwether Award from the 2020 Community Colleges Futures Assembly for efficiency and effectiveness of the migration of the IT Administrative Information System to the cloud. And to close out the year, HCC won the Great Colleges to Work For Award for a record-breaking 12th year in a row. HCC is the only community college to have won this workplace award every year community colleges have been eligible. Spring 2020 also marked an award-winning season for the men's basketball team. Recently, the student athletes received their NJCAA Region 20 championship rings.
This is nice, yeah. I'm not gonna be able to take this off. Oh my goodness.
The Region 20 and Mid-Atlantic District Tournament champions, Howard Community College Dragons!
I feel like I was on top of the world. I ain't gonna lie to you. I feel like I was on top of the world. My first big championship I ever came across like that. I mean, I had little ones like AAU, but college, that's the one right there. My name on it, I'm gonna be a part of the school history forever now, and I like it. I love it like that. Thank you.
What are you gonna do with the ring? You're gonna display it, wear it? What do you think?
I may post it on Instagram, put it on my social media, and just cherish it. I'm looking at it, it still feels unreal.
It's amazing. It's the best feeling. It's my first one, my first championship ring. So, this is amazing. I can't even describe.
Under Coach Smelkinson's leadership, the Dragons celebrated a championship win for the first time since 2013 and the second time in program history. For the fall 2020 season, HCC launched a new sport that allows students to play safely from home. Esports has HCC students competing in online multiplayer video games against students from other colleges and universities.
Esports is basically video games played in a competitive environment.
I've always wanted to play on an esports team. As soon as I heard HCC esports was a thing, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm either going to watch in this or play in this.
And when I got to HCC, I found esports and I saw Rocky League and I was like, I had to do it. It was one of my favorite games. I just had to do it.
One of my classmates was the captain for the League of Legends team. So I asked him about it. I've been playing professionally in Norway before I came here. What I like the most is that I can see ways I can help them, and I see it happen. I see them improve, and I see them take my criticism well.
This is going to be a big time thing. Like, everybody that has been involved in this knows that there's a lot of potential in this program to really succeed.
I already got two offers to play from two of the schools, and this is my last year at HCC. So it's crazy that I can play a video game and like get like a scholarship or an offer to actually go to a different school. It just feels great to actually turn your hobby into something way bigger.
We wish the esports teams the best of luck this season. Well, that wraps up this edition of Pathways. Thank you for joining me.